Long before anyone could remember, Elderwood Forest stood between two mountains like a great green kingdom. Clear streams wound through carpets of wildflowers. Foxes played among rocks. Deer moved quietly beneath a towering canopy. At the heart of it all stood the oldest living thing in the forest, the great oak. His bark was thick and weathered. His branches reached toward the sky like open arms. Birds nested in his hollows. Squirrels stored acorns inside his trunk. Travelers from distant forests rested in his shade. The animals simply called him Old Oak. They believed he listened, even when he did not speak. If someone felt afraid, they rested beneath him. If someone celebrated, they gathered around his roots. Over time, he became more than a tree. He became the forest's quiet guardian. Not far from him grew a small sapling named Ash. Ash was slender, with a thin trunk and bright leaves that trembled at every breeze. He dreamed of becoming strong like Old Oak, but each day he looked up with a mix of admiration and frustration. "I'll never become like him," Ash sighed one warm afternoon. A robin landed on one of Ash's tiny branches. "Why not?" the bird asked. Ash replied, "I'm too small. Storms frighten me. Look at Old Oak. He never seems afraid." The robin glanced toward the massive tree. "You'd be surprised," it said, then flew away. As summer faded into autumn, Elderwood changed its colors. Golden leaves drifted through the air. One evening, dark clouds gathered beyond the western mountains. The rabbits noticed first. "The sky looks angry," one whispered. The crows flew lower than usual. Even the river seemed to slow. By sunset, the wind began to whisper through the branches. Old Oak listened. "I know that voice," he murmured. A family of sparrows fluttered nervously in his hollows. "Is something wrong?" they asked. "A great storm is coming," Old Oak replied. The warning spread across the forest. Beavers reinforced their dams. Foxes deepened their dens. Birds secured their nests. Chipmunks buried extra food. Only Ash couldn't stop shaking. "What if I break?" he whispered. "What if the wind tears me apart?" Near the river grew Willow, a graceful tree whose slender branches bowed with every breeze. Ash watched her swaying and called out, "You bend all the time. Doesn't that make you weak?" Willow laughed softly, leaves shimmering. "Sometimes bending keeps us alive," she said. "But everyone says Old Oak never bows," Ash insisted. Willow's voice became thoughtful. "People often misunderstand strength." Before Ash could ask more, thunder rolled across the mountains. Trees whip in the wind. The storm arrived with sudden fury. Rain poured from the sky. The wind howled between the trees. Branches whipped. Bushes flattened. Animals disappeared underground. Ash fought desperately to stay upright. Every gust bent him lower. "I can't do this," he cried. "I wish I was stronger." He looked toward Old Oak. The giant tree stood, trunk firm, despite the violent shaking of his limbs. How was he doing that? Ash wondered. Hidden among the highest branches perched Raven, a bird who admired only power. He watched the frightened animals with a smirk. "Look at them," he said, terrified. Spotting Ash, he swooped down. "So, you wanted to become like Old Oak?" Raven asked. "Yes," Ash answered, struggling against the wind. "Then stop bending," Raven said. "If you're strong, stand perfectly still, no matter what." "But the wind!" "Only the weak bend," Raven snapped. The words echoed inside Ash's mind. "Only the weak bend." He stiffened. He resisted every gust. His roots groaned beneath the soil. "Ash!" Willow called through the storm. "Don't fight every gust!" But Ash ignored her, desperate to prove his strength. Raven watched, satisfied. "Good," he said. "Now you're becoming strong." The storm grew wilder. Wind slammed into the forest in violent waves. Rain turned the ground to mud. Lightning split the sky. Ash refused to move. Every blast pushed harder. "I won't bow," he gasped. Then, with a terrible crack, one of his largest branches snapped and fell to the soaked forest floor. Ash cried out in pain. Birds, watching from shelter, gasped. Willow closed her eyes sadly. Raven flew higher, avoiding the worst of the storm. Old Oak remained silent, watching, waiting. Then, Ash stared at his broken limb, trembling. "I failed," he whispered. "I'll never become strong." The wind carried his words to Old Oak. The ancient tree finally spoke. His voice deep and calm, like distant thunder. "No, little one," he said, "you have only mistaken stubbornness for strength." "But everyone says you never bow," Ash protested. Old Oak seemed almost amused. "They have repeated those words for generations," he replied, "but very few have understood them." Lightning lit the forest for a brief moment, revealing animals peering from their shelters. Even ravens circled lower, curious. "My trunk does not bow," Old Oak continued, "because my roots already have." Ash looked down at the muddy ground, confused. "My roots?" he asked. "Every year they grow deeper," said Old Oak. "They reach around rocks instead of trying to move them. They follow water instead of fighting dry soil. They accept the shape of the earth. Above the ground, I may look unmovable," he said, "but beneath the surface, I have learned to yield where no one can see." Ash fell silent. He had spent all his strength trying to appear strong. He had never thought about becoming strong. The storm raged on. Wind tore at branches. Rain flooded low ground. A rabbit family scrambled from a collapsing burrow. "Our hill is giving way!" cried the mother rabbit. "We have nowhere to hide!" A bluebird's nest began to tear apart in the wind. Fawns huddled together, eyes wide with fear. Old Oak looked over the frightened forest. "My friends," he called, "come to me!" Despite the storm, animals ran toward him. His massive roots rose from the earth like walls. His huge trunk blocked the fiercest gusts. His canopy, though battered, softened the pounding rain. Rabbits, squirrels, hedgehogs, foxes, deer, even Raven, gathered beneath him for shelter. For the first time, Raven stood not above others, but among them. Ash watched in amazement. Old Oak wasn't proving his strength. He was using it to protect everyone else. Old Oak straining, animals sheltering around his roots. Then the storm struck with its greatest force. A deafening crack echoed through Elderwood as one of Old Oak's largest branches split away. Birds screamed as their nests tumbled through the air. Without hesitation, Old Oak shifted his remaining limbs, exposing one side of his ancient trunk to the full power of the storm. Another enormous branch snapped free. "Old Oak!" Ash cried. "You're losing your branches!" "Branches can grow again," Old Oak answered. "A life cannot." His fallen limbs crashed around the animals, but not onto them. Each broken branch became a barrier, blocking wind and deflecting floodwater. Old Oak gave away pieces of himself so others could survive. Deep inside, something changed in Ash. True strength, he realized, wasn't standing tallest. It was standing for others. High above, Raven watched the destruction. He remembered his own words, "Only the weak bend." Now he saw the truth. The strongest tree in the forest had willingly sacrificed his own branches, not because he was weak, but because he loved those beneath him. Raven lowered his head. "I was wrong," he whispered. He flew to Ash. "I'm sorry," he said. "I taught you pride instead of courage." Ash glanced at his broken branch. "So did I," he replied. "I wanted everyone to admire me." Old Oak spoke once more. "The desire to appear strong," he said, "often keeps us from becoming strong." Slowly, the storm began to lose its fury. Wind softened. Rain faded to a gentle drizzle. Morning light crept back across Elderwood. The day will be emerged. Elderwood had changed. Some young trees had fallen. Paths disappeared beneath scattered branches. The river had carved a new course. Ash looked at the damage, then at himself. His largest branch was gone. His trunk bore fresh scars, but he was alive. Nearby stood Old Oak, battered, scarred, still standing. The animals gathered around him. The oldest tortoise stepped forward. "We have told our children for generations," he said. "The Old Oak never bowed." He smiled. "Today, we finally understand." "He never bowed to fear," said the rabbit. "He never bowed to despair," added the fox. "He never bowed to selfishness," said the owl. Willow swayed gently, and because he was humble beneath the ground, she said, he could stand firm above it. Even Raven lowered his head in respect. Months passed. Winter snow came and went. Spring returned with gentle rain. New shoots appeared where fallen branches had rested. Flowers grew around Old Oak's roots. Birds rebuilt their nests. The forest healed. Ash changed too. He no longer compared himself to Old Oak. Instead, he focused on growing deeper each season. When storms came, he no longer fought every gust. He bent when wisdom required it. He stood firm when courage demanded it. Years turned Ash into a strong tree in his own right. Young saplings often asked, "How did you become so strong?" Ash would look toward Old Oak and answer, "I once believed strength meant never bending, but an old friend taught me something far greater." Many years later, Old Oak's trunk had grown hollow with age. His branches hung a little lower, yet animals still gathered in his shade. One evening, as the sun vanished behind the mountains, a tiny sapling asked, "Why does everyone call him the old oak that never bowed?" Ash smiled. "They don't mean he never swayed in the wind," he said. "They don't mean life never wounded him, and they don't mean he never sacrificed." Ash looked lovingly toward his old teacher. "They mean he never bowed to fear," he continued. "He never bowed to selfishness. He never bowed to despair. He chose courage when it was difficult. He chose kindness when it was costly. He chose perseverance when giving up would have been easier." The forest grew quiet. Old oak's leaves rustled gently overhead, as if in agreement. And long after the great storm was only a memory, the lesson of the old oak lived on. In every root that reached deeper, in every branch that offered shelter, and in every heart that chose courage over fear. Moral: true strength is not in never bending. It is in growing deep enough to withstand life's storms, staying humble enough to learn, choosing to use our strength to protect others rather than prove ourselves. We may sway and be scarred, but like the old oak, we should never bow to fear, selfishness, or despair. Every story leaves a lesson and leaves us with a choice. Be kinder, stronger, wiser. If today's story stayed with you, there's another waiting to inspire you. Subscribe to Motivating Morals, where every story leaves a lesson, and every lesson has the power to change a life. Until our next story, keep choosing wisdom.